It's Saturday morning. You wake up naturally, no alarm. The light through the window is soft, quiet. Your phone buzzes on the bedside table. A group chat notification. Someone's planning brunch. Someone else is asking who's coming to a party tonight. You read the messages. You even smile a little. Then you put the phone face down, roll back under the blanket, and feel this strange wave of relief wash over you. No plans, no crowded room, just you, a slow morning, maybe coffee, maybe a walk, maybe absolutely nothing. And for a moment, it feels perfect.
But then a small thought sneaks in. Am I wasting my weekend? Because somewhere along the way, we absorb this idea that weekends are supposed to be loud, social, productive, full. If you're not out doing something exciting, it almost feels like you're doing it wrong. But here's the quiet truth.
For a lot of people, the most psychologically restorative weekends are the quiet ones. And there are very real, very fascinating reasons why your brain might crave that slower rhythm. Once you understand those reasons, the way you see your own habits, maybe even your personality, might shift completely. Back in the 1970s, psychologists studying personality patterns, especially researchers building on the work of Carl Jung and later the Big Five personality model, noticed something interesting. People who prefer quieter environments aren't simply less social. Their brains process stimulation differently, and that difference shows up most clearly in the moments when life finally slows down, like weekends. To understand why quiet weekends feel so satisfying for some people, you have to understand something your brain is constantly doing in the background: regulating stimulation. Your brain, like a thermostat, is always trying to maintain a comfortable level of input. Noise, conversations, notifications, crowds, new experiences, social dynamics. All of these things are forms of stimulation. For some people, stimulation energizes them. Their brains crave it. Social gatherings, busy schedules, packed weekends, they feel exciting and motivating. But for others, the brain reaches its stimulation limit much faster. Psychologists often link this to differences in the dopamine reward system. Research in the 1990s and 2000s found that more introverted brains can be more sensitive to dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward, motivation, and novelty, which means the same environment that feels fun and energizing for one person can feel overwhelming for another. Imagine two radios. One needs the volume at 80 to hear the music. The other only needs it at 30. Turn the volume to 80 and one person is dancing, while the other feels like the speakers are blasting directly into their nervous system. By the time Friday night arrives, many people have already spent 5 straight days in high-stimulation environments. Workplaces full of conversations, deadlines, notifications, traffic, meetings, small talk, decision-making. Your brain has been on stage all week. So when Saturday finally comes, quiet doesn't feel boring. It feels like oxygen. And here's the part people often misunderstand. Wanting quiet weekends doesn't mean you dislike people. In fact, for many people, it's the opposite. Social interaction requires a surprising amount of mental energy. Your brain is constantly decoding facial expressions, tone, body language, expectations, subtle social cues. A 2016 study from researchers at the University of Helsinki found that even pleasant social interactions can create measurable cognitive load. Your brain is actively working the entire time. Which means that after a long week, quiet time isn't isolation, it's recovery. Your brain lowering the volume back down. Think about another small scene. Sunday afternoon. You're sitting on the couch. Maybe there's a cup of tea next to you. Maybe you're reading something random online. Maybe you're just staring out the window while the day slowly fades into evening. Nothing impressive is happening, but your mind feels strangely clear. Ideas drift in, memories float up, thoughts connect in ways they didn't during the busy week. This isn't laziness. It's something neuroscientists call the default mode network. Discovered through brain imaging research in the early 2000s, the default mode network is the system that activates when your brain is not focused on external tasks. When you're resting, reflecting, daydreaming. And here's what makes it fascinating. This network is deeply involved in creativity, emotional processing, long-term planning, and self-understanding. In other words, some of the most important mental work your brain does happens when you appear to be doing nothing. Quiet weekends create the conditions for this network to come online, which means that the slow afternoon on the couch is sometimes the exact moment your brain begins quietly reorganizing your life. But there's another layer to the psychology, one that has less to do with the brain itself and more to do with social expectations. Because culturally, weekends have become a kind of performance. People post the restaurant, the party, the trip, the perfect Saturday night. And without realizing it, we start comparing our inner world to other people's highlight reels. You're sitting at home in comfortable silence while your phone shows 20 people laughing under neon lights, and suddenly, your quiet weekend feels like a failure. But here's what's rarely visible. Those loud nights often come with invisible costs: social fatigue, overscheduling, the subtle pressure to be on. Many people chase busy weekends not because they truly enjoy them, but because they feel like they should. Your quiet weekend might actually be something closer to psychological honesty. You're choosing the rhythm that your brain genuinely finds restorative. And ironically, this tendency often comes with a hidden strength. People who value quiet time often have unusually active inner worlds. They reflect more. They notice subtle patterns in conversations. They process emotions more deeply. Psychologist Jerome Kagan, who spent decades studying temperament, found that individuals with more sensitive nervous systems often develop heightened observational skills and deeper introspection. In simple terms, when you're not constantly chasing stimulation, your attention turns inward. You think more. You notice more. You understand people more. But of course, every trait has its trade-offs. Quiet weekends can create a strange social feedback loop. You decline plans, friends assume you're not interested. They stop inviting you as often. You end up spending even more time alone, which reinforces the pattern. Sometimes that solitude becomes peaceful. Sometimes it becomes isolating, and the line between those two states can be surprisingly thin. The healthiest rhythm usually isn't constant social activity or constant solitude. It's oscillation, moments of connection, followed by moments of quiet. Like breathing. Inhale, exhale. Social energy in, quiet reflection out. The problem isn't quiet weekends. The problem is when we start judging ourselves for wanting them. Because when you feel guilty for resting, you never fully receive the rest. You're physically at home, but mentally arguing with yourself. Which brings us back to that Saturday morning. The phone buzzes, the brunch plans, the party invitation. You read the messages, you smile, and then you turn the phone face down again. The room is quiet. The sunlight is soft. For a long time, you might have thought that moment meant you were missing out on something. But the deeper psychological truth might be this: your brain wasn't avoiding life, it was returning to balance. People who love quiet weekends often share a simple pattern. Their minds absorb the world deeply, and that depth requires space. Space to think, space to process, space to reset. And those slow mornings, quiet afternoons, and uneventful Sundays aren't empty. They're where your mind quietly puts the pieces of your life back together. So if you've ever felt strange for enjoying the calm more than the chaos, you're not broken. You're probably just wired for depth. And once you understand that wiring, you stop apologizing for it. You start protecting it. Because sometimes the most productive thing your brain can do is absolutely nothing. And if this idea resonated with you, if quiet weekends feel less like boredom and more like breathing, you might find the next question even more interesting. Why do some people naturally keep their social circles small, even when they care deeply about others?
There's a fascinating psychological pattern behind that, too. So if you want to understand your own wiring a little better, you'll probably enjoy the next video on the psychology of keeping your circle small.